Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures, home of the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee, and today I want to talk about what we can do to make sure that there is a next generation of Wargamers to follow on from us. So this video really is an extension of one I did last year, which in itself was derived from Little Wars TV's video, Is the Hobby Dying? Is Historical Wargaming Dying? And at the time I said, no, I didn't think so, but I thought it was worth doing a follow-up video, admittedly quite a bit later, to discuss what it is we can do to make sure that there is a next generation of Wargamers to follow on in our footsteps, or to take over the hobby and do what they want with it. And you know, as I say, in my original video I said I thought the hobby looked like it was really healthy, and everything I've read since seems to bear that out. You know, many companies have got through the last 12 months seemingly very in a good position to resume normal business, whatever that might be, in the coming months, and hopefully by the end of the year we might even see some shows. Cross fingers. You never say for certain these days, but we hope. And like I say, in that video I briefly discussed on that next generation, that we need to encourage them. But I thought, well, what do we need to do to get them involved? And some of that is club activities and so on, where you're bringing in other people, but actually we're overlooking an important resource, our own children. So, you know, they are potential wargamers of the future, people who can inherit your collection when you're done with it. I don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but I do have a bit of experience, having had two children who've grown up to be quite happy gamers. So here are a few suggestions here about what I think you need to do in order to make sure that your children grow up to inherit the hobby that you love. So I think one of the first things we ought to be asking is, what age do we start at? Well, in my opinion, there is no starting age. As soon as you're able to have a basic conversation with them is the point at which you're starting your journey, training them to be your successors. And you know, at that age obviously play is vital, both to their learning and development in general, and you know, you can make that play aimed towards your hobby, give them an interest in what you do, you know. But talk to your kids in general is just good for good development. It's basic parenting basically, but it's also good for their speech and their cognitive development. And of course, you know, in that process of having a conversation with them, you're going to talk about all sorts of things, and as they get older those conversations are going to get more complex. You can talk about a wider range of subjects, and you could be talking about your hobby or things that interest them, and show and linking into your hobby. It's not, and you don't have to just talk about subjects that excite you. Obviously show an interest in what excites them as well. And then as they get slightly older and they're able to do it, you know, play a wide range of board and dice games with them, you know, and in the process show them your toys as well. They'll love it, they'll be interested. And you know, I tend to shy away from the phrase quality time, because as far as I'm concerned it's just good parenting. But spend time with your potential inheritors of your hobby, you know, these potential future gamers, and show an interest in what they're doing and get involved in that conversations at a very early stage. I think I would like to say is that, you know, fully fledged big battle Napoleonic wargamers don't just pop out of nowhere. But everyone has to have an origin story to, you know, if you want to think of it in superhero terms. You know, we all need to start somewhere, and not all of us are going to be lucky enough to have that passion just sort of imbued within us. You know, we might need to help encourage that. We want to develop an inherent strategy, an inherent love of strategy games and complex board games. So we would start that at an early stage, playing Ludo or whatever it might be. You know, you play a game. You know, teach them chess if you're into that. You know, as they get slightly older, obviously, and more able to deal with it. But the point is you're building a love of games in them. You know, rather than and you know, and there's nothing. I'm not for any moment here suggesting that computer games are bad. I don't have any of that shock of the new type irrational fear. All of these are good things for kids in moderation. And the same with board games. Get them to play things, do things with their hands. It's good for their physical development. And I assure you, your teachers will, your kids' teachers will thank you if you've taught them how to use a pair of scissors and how to fold paper. Basic skills that many kids seem to lack when they reach primary school. And of course, as they get older, those games can get slightly more complex. But what I would say, and I will come back to this later, is don't force it. Whatever you're doing with your kids, it needs to be fun. It needs to be led by what they're interested in, as well as what you want to teach them. So spend some time with your kids in those early formative years and lay the groundwork for teaching them your hobby at a later stage. Now, as children get slightly older and you're able to have more detailed, complex conversations with them, what you want to be trying to do is trying to instill an interest and a passion for history in them. Now, and that means take them to museums with you at a very early age. I remember pushing my kids around Boverton Tank Museum when they were in prams. They're used to being in museums. It's second nature to them. It's what we do on holiday and at the weekends, in normal times, of course. So both my children have grown up with an interest and a passion in history that I think I credit to the fact that we have always, as a family, taken an interest in that history. And you can't become a historical wargamer if you're not interested in history. And as I say again, historical wargamers don't just pop out of nothing. They come from, they have an origin story. They learn their passion for history at a very early stage. Now, if they're lucky, they'll get a really good history teacher at school, but why leave it to luck? You're the best history teacher they're ever going to have. And make sure that there's lots of variety and fun. Watch historical films together and then tell them what's wrong with those films. Take them to living history events of all different periods so they get to see and smell and hear the sounds of the subjects that you're interested in. See what they're interested in and go down that route. Try and find things like hands-on history. I remember taking my kids to a mock archaeological dig that was being run by the Museum of London, and they basically had a sand pit and they had to excavate. But it was run by archaeologists and it was teaching them what archaeologists do and the basics of their skills. And it was a good fun activity, but they were learning in the process. And if you go to living history events, there'll be reenactors there making things, weaving and carving and making pieces of armour or whatever it might be. And they're more than happy to talk to you. And they love talking to the kids because they can see potential historical reenactors in the future in amongst them. And keep an eye out for specialist archaeological events that are linked to children. Most big museums do it, so keep an eye out for those sort of things, and a lot of them will have special exhibitions and so on. Now, I'm going to get slightly controversial here because I've never been one to really censor history to my kids. From a very early age, I taught them and talked to them about the grimmer side of history, and I remember taking both my children to a Holocaust exhibition when they were very young, and I got some proper dirty looks off other people for taking my kids around. But I was teaching them history as it really was. Obviously I didn't want to shock or scare them, but I didn't want to censor history and give them a false sense of what history was about. From a very early age, they understood the politics behind that sort of history, and that history has a dark side and we can learn something from it. Don't mollycoddle children. They're more robust than you think. And then as they get slightly older, obviously you want to try and introduce them to things like painting and so on, but actually I think it's a really good idea to take them to some of our game shows. Not only is it an enjoyable shared experience, if you go with the intention of enjoying it with your kids and not just have them stand around bored or you chat to people all the time, that you need to be there together. But the point is they get to experience that big event with lots of periods and lots of different types of games and loads of products available, and they can see the whole breadth of the hobby. And as I say, you spending time with them, you find out what they're actually interested in. See which period of history, or indeed fantasy or sci-fi, if that's what piques their interest, then so be it. We all have to start somewhere, and later on that building blocks that you made in getting them interested in history will come and be fruitful. But if they want to start off as fantasy gamers, then so be it. That's where I started. It hasn't done me any harm in the long run. So expose them to as wide a range of genres as you can and games. And when you turn up for shows, try and sign up for at least one participation game that's aimed at kids. I've seen plenty of them at shows, particularly big ones like Sloot and so on, but also at smaller shows, and they're fun. They tend to be short and snappy, and the kids enjoy themselves, and usually there might be a bit of dressing up, a bit of silliness, whatever. That's all good stuff because they're enjoying themselves, and they will link that enjoyment, they'll remember that enjoyment and that time with you to your hobby, and hopefully that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. These shared experiences are bonding moments at the end of the day, so make sure that you create them and give your kids some of those really good memories to go on, because they will end up coming back to the hobby at some point, and they will be the next generation that takes it on. So as already indicated, play a variety of games. No, you can't just start with the Battle of Waterloo. You'll blow their minds and they'll never come back to the hobby again. Be prepared to play all sorts of games, even ones you yourself wouldn't necessarily play, because it's as much about spending time with them and getting them interested in the hobby as it is you having a good time. I once had a friend who described teaching his kids how to play a game as, I will thrash them for their own good. It's like, what is the point of that? They'll never play a game. So be prepared to play all sorts of things. Play lots of different board games, and as they get older, those board games can get more complex. Play role-playing games. Role-playing games are a great way to build social skills and to teach them critical thinking skills. And they were, for me, they were a stepping block into other more complicated games, war games, and then on historical war games. And then be prepared to play skirmish games. You may only like big battle games, but play skirmish games. Play sci-fi, fantasy, whatever it takes, zombie games, whatever it takes, what they're interested in, play that. It doesn't stop you from having your hobby as an extra. You can go and keep on collecting your Napoleonics while you play sci-fi with your child. The point is you're playing something they're interested in, you're getting them involved in the wider hobby, and they'll find, if you've created that passion for history, they'll find their way to historical wargaming eventually, if they want to. My kids have been involved in all sorts of games from a very early age. Indeed, I've taken the young Padawan to the Shed of War on more than one occasion, and on one notable occasion she won the Battle of Kambula against three learned and experienced wargamers, myself included. She put up a very good defensive fight and won the game. But she's more interested in sort of sci-fi and fantasy, so we've ended up playing Frostgrave. Now, it wouldn't have been something I would have picked on my own, but I've enjoyed collecting and painting for that setting because I'm playing it with her and it's what she's interested in. And at some later stage she may decide that wargaming and gaming in general isn't for her, or she might, but the point is I've laid the groundwork. The decision is up to her. Now, there's a proverb that I learned as a kid, and actually it's been around for a long time. Apparently it's a 12th century proverb, and it basically says you can lead a horse to water but you can't make him drink, which basically means to say you can give someone opportunities but you can't force them to take them. So provide them with the opportunity to enjoy your hobby and experience your hobby, but then you're going to have to leave it to them. If they're not interested, they're genuinely not interested, you can't force them to be interested, but you can provide them with all of the material and the experience and the knowledge they need to let them develop a passion for it if they want to. I think it's essential to provide positive images of our hobby as well, particularly if you've got girls and you want them to be involved in the hobby. So we all have a responsibility there to make sure that there are positive female images in the hobby for them. I won't go into that now because that's an entire separate video for another time. But it's also important to realise that the future's theirs, not ours. We can only get them involved in the hobby, and then after that it's up to them. They will hobby differently to us, and that's exactly as it should be. The hobby has never been preserved in aspect you know, we like to pretend that we're following some grand tradition, but we play different rule sets now than they did a generation or two before us and before that. So things will change, the hobby will change. We might not necessarily like the direction the hobby's going in, but it doesn't mean to say we can't continue to play until we drop down dead. We can still play, our old grognards can continue playing in a way we like and the games and the systems we like for as long as we like. But ultimately, we need to be prepared to pass on the baton to this new generation and then let them get on with it and let them shape the future of the hobby. Well, I've gone on a little bit longer than I probably planned. I do tend to ramble. So I hope you found that useful and interesting, and maybe it's going to start a bit of a conversation. I hope so. And of course, if you did like it, please like, subscribe and share. So until next week, as always, keep safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.